So, how are our most basic fundamental rights actually changing in this digital age? It's a huge question, and honestly, it affects every single one of us now. This explainer is based on the works of Professor Vihar Kiskinov, and in it, we're going to unpack the core challenges and the massive transformations happening to law in our, well, increasingly virtual world.
You know, the central tension of our digital age really boils down to this. How do we balance our fundamental freedoms when they just inevitably crash into each other online? Think about it. When one person's right to speak their mind becomes another person's experience of being harassed, or when the government's need for security starts to chip away at our privacy, who gets to decide where that line is? That's the core problem we're going to be digging into.
All right, here's the game plan for this explainer. We're going to kick things off with the real-world conflicts that are happening right now. Then we'll get into the weeds a bit and define a really foundational legal concept called a subjective right. From there, we'll see just how much of a game-changer technology is, we'll explore the brand new rights that are starting to pop up, and finally, we'll look at why our legal system is, frankly, struggling to keep up with it all.
Okay, so let's jump right into those friction points. And these aren't some abstract legal theories, right? These are dilemmas that pop up from our daily lives online. Professor Kiskinov points out several key areas where our rights are really colliding head-on.
Now, this one is the classic online dilemma, isn't it? On one hand, freedom of speech, a cornerstone of democracy, gets this powerful new voice through anonymous forums and blogs. But, on the other hand, that exact same anonymity can be used as a weapon, leading to defamation and personal attacks that are just incredibly difficult to fight back against. And just like that, you've got a direct conflict between the right to speak and the right to protect your own reputation. And here's another huge clash. In the name of fighting crime and terrorism, states are arguing they need to hold on to massive amounts of our data, who we talk to, where we are, all our connections. But that just runs directly counter to our fundamental right to a private life. I mean, even if they're not reading our messages, the metadata alone paints an unbelievably detailed picture of our lives, which really challenges the basic principles of data protection we thought we had.
And check this out. This shows a paradox even in policies that are meant to be helpful. E-government is all about efficiency. The idea is one-time data collection, you give your data just once, and different government agencies can use it. Sounds great, right? But it clashes directly with data protection laws that say, hey, you can't just keep data forever, and you can't use it for things you didn't originally collect it for. So you've got efficiency and privacy pulling in completely opposite directions.
Okay, to really wrap our heads around these conflicts, we need to understand the core legal idea at the heart of it all, the subjective right. So, what in the world is that? Well, it's pretty much the legal foundation for all of our freedoms. The really crucial thing to get here is that a subjective right isn't just a wish or a moral claim. It's a legally recognized, state-guaranteed power. You can almost think of it like a property deed for your freedom. It spells out the boundaries of what you're allowed to do, and it gives you the legal firepower to stop others, including the government, from trespassing on that freedom.
So where do these rights even come from? Well, legal philosophy has two main camps. The natural law school says rights are inherent. We have them just by virtue of being human. They exist before any laws are written. The positive law school, on the other hand, argues that rights don't really exist until a state writes them down and grants them. And that distinction is super important for understanding how we debate and eventually create new rights today.
Building on that idea, the legal scholar Kurl Vashak came up with this really powerful way of thinking about human rights, linking them to the ideals of the French Revolution. The first generation of rights is all about liberty, basically protecting us from the state. The second is about equality, guaranteeing things like a job and social security. And the third generation focuses on fraternity, collective rights, like the right to a clean environment. This whole evolution is the foundation that today's new digital rights are being built on. And that brings us right to the heart of this explainer. The thing is, the information society and this virtual world we live in, they don't just give old rights a new place to exist. Technology is an active catalyst. It is fundamentally changing the very nature of our rights. You see, technology is a real double-edged sword. It creates these incredible new ways for us to use our freedoms, to speak, to organize, to get information, but at the same time, it creates entirely new ways to violate those exact same rights. Take a DDoS attack, for example. That's basically a modern form of censorship. It's a technical way to silence someone. So now protecting our rights often requires a technological defense, not just a legal one. So with all these big changes happening, it's really no surprise that we're seeing a whole new catalog of rights start to emerge. This is basically the next chapter in the long story of human freedom. So here are just a few of the new rights that are being fiercely debated. Should access to the internet be a fundamental right, just like access to water? What about the right to participate in democracy online, or the right to speak anonymously, or to control our own digital identities? I mean, these aren't just theoretical questions anymore. These are real demands coming out of our digital reality.
And what's really interesting is that some of these ideas are already starting to become actual law. Rights like being able to reuse public information, making personal copies of digital stuff you own, and maybe most famously, the right to be forgotten. These have started to find their way into European and national laws. It shows a really clear trend toward making our digital freedoms official.
This quote from a European Commission document just powerfully captures this shift in thinking. The argument is basically that in a modern, innovative economy, the free movement of knowledge is just as fundamental as the free movement of goods or people. That's a huge reframing of what we consider a core economic and personal freedom.
So we've looked at the conflicts, we've defined the terms, and we've explored this new frontier of rights. All of this brings us to our final section and what is really Professor Kiskinov's central conclusion. The law itself is running to catch up with the blistering pace of technology.
And this chart illustrates the core problem perfectly. Social and technological change is just exploding. It's exponential. Meanwhile, the process of creating laws and regulations moves at a much slower pace. And this growing gap means that our interactions online are often happening in a kind of legal gray zone, way ahead of the rules that are supposed to govern them. This gap creates some serious imbalances, or what the source material calls asymmetries. What this means is we have rights that exist on paper, but not really in practice. A right gets declared, like the right to be forgotten, but the government might not have a clear duty to actually enforce it. And even if it does, there are often no clear legal steps for you to take when someone violates that right. It's kind of like being given a key, but there's no lock on the door.
So here's the bottom line. This isn't just about adding a few new laws here and there. The entire field of law, from how it's studied, to how it's made, to how it's actually used in court, is being forced to adapt to the realities of a virtual world. It is a massive paradigm shift for the whole legal system.
Which leaves us with one final and, I think, vital question. As technology keeps reshaping our world at an ever faster pace, who should be responsible for writing the new rules? Is it our governments? Is it the tech companies? Or is it us, the citizens of this new digital world? The answer is going to define the future of freedom in the information society.